I'm back with the finished results of this color that I am calling a bright emerald green and a lime green color using the Keda wood dye 5-color kit. So before we get too far into this, I really just wanted to thank you guys for watching my videos, for the kind words that you end up putting in my comment section for the videos, as well as just the encouragement that you guys end up giving me. I really appreciate it more than you actually may realize. I really do get quite nervous making these videos. I'm not exactly sure why, just something to do with the camera and YouTube. So I apologize for that. I think I've been getting a little bit better, especially with the encouragement that you guys have been giving me. And I just really wanted to reach out and say, hey, thank you so much for doing that. Taking the little extra step that you guys do by leaving a comment. So I really honestly do appreciate that. With that said, I do want to get into this color now. Today I'm going to be working on a color that I call bright emerald green. I'm going to be doing an 8-ounce formula. I'm going to be using the Keda dye 5-color kit, and I'm going to be using 2 colors from that kit, the yellow and the blue. I'm going to also be doing an 8-ounce formula, so if you wanted a smaller amount, then just divide everything by 2. So example being that if you wanted a 4-ounce formula, then just use 4 ounces of the isopropyl alcohol, and then 1 full 1/8 teaspoon of the blue, and then a 1/2 teaspoon of the yellow. If you wanted more, say you wanted to double it, then you would end up going with 2 teaspoons of the 1/4 teaspoon of blue, and then 2 teaspoons of the 1/8 teaspoon of the yellow. We will get into the measurements as well too, so that way if you're weighing it up, you can just multiply that by 2 or divide that weight by 2 as well. So I'm just going to get into this. I'm going to be dispensing 8 ounces of the isopropyl alcohol. There we go. Okay, so basically what I do with the blue is I get a full teaspoon of the blue, and then I just strike it off with this Ziploc on this containment bag here. So I'm going to be looking for 0.8 grams to 0.85 grams. So I'm going to be doing it a 0.83 gram on this particular batch. I have 0.86. Sorry, I don't have a backlight on this scale. My other one ended up going down. I do have another on order. So I do have the 0.83 grams. Hopefully that's going to show up on the camera. So 0.83 grams of the blue. Get this into the isopropyl alcohol. I'm going to be using about a heaping 1/8 teaspoon. So this one I'm going to be looking for 0.5 grams. So I have about a heaping teaspoon here, 1/8 teaspoon I should say, and we'll see how close this comes out. Like I said, I'm looking for 0.5 grams. Now this scale is a, 0.45 is what I have here, is a double digit, so it goes to the hundredths. This is for like loading gunpowders and things like that, but I don't think you'll need anything quite expensive as this. There's some other scales with like 100 gram to 0.01 gram scales on Amazon and eBay. Oh, I didn't show you that on the weight. I apologize, but it was the 0.49 on here, which is okay. The 0.01 isn't going to make a whole lot of difference. So now I'm just closing this tight and I'm giving it a good shake. I'm going to shake this for a while because the more that I shake it, the better that the dyes are going to mix into the isopropyl alcohol. Now I'm just going to release this, the top on here to release some of the pressure. I'm just going to take a quick little sneak peek at it. Tighten it up again, and then I'm just giving it a shake like this just so I can see what the color is. Hopefully that's showing up pretty well. You can see that it's like a nice bright emerald green color in the bottle. So I'm going to let that rest at least an hour, probably 2 hours. There's times that I've let this rest overnight and it worked just beautiful as well. So if you go longer, it's not a big deal. So if you wanted to let it rest overnight, it would be just fine. Anyways, so I hope that was pretty easy to follow along, and I'll let this rest and then I'll come back and proceed on to the application. Okay, so I'm going to try to power through this video and try to get this done. Now I have 2 different pieces. I'm sorry, I don't have a quilted maple. Actually, this color is based off of a request. I do have a curly maple. It's a board similar to some of the other videos I ended up doing. I'm really sorry about that. I'm kind of limited to the access. I know some guys want me to do swamp ash and a bunch of other stuff. I'm really restricted by what I can end up getting. I mean, I could order some stuff online, but it gets pretty expensive for some of that stuff. So I'm just kind of picking through some of the things I have access to, and I hope that you can understand. I do have a piece of pine here. It's a solid piece of pine. I'm going to actually get going with this application, and then I'll end up explaining what I did for the wood prep. I'm going to do this whole entire piece, including the end grains. So basically with this wood prep, it was a little bit different. I basically took it down with a 120, a 150, a 180, and then I ended up wiping it down with the isopropyl alcohol, you know, just to clean up the sanding and stuff, the sanding dust. And then I ended up letting that dry out, fully dry out. And from there, then I ended up hitting it with a 220 grit. So this is a little bit tighter sand with a little higher grit. So applying this to something that's going to be, I'll say, you know, done with a 150 or a 180 grit is going to have a little easier color penetration faster. But I'm planning on doing probably about 2 to 3 coats of this. You know, just because I personally like applying a second and a third coat. That's why I don't know, I personally do. I just like the results a little better. I like going with a little lighter mix of the dye and then applying a follow-up coat. You don't have to do that. Some guys just like to go with the one coat and that's it. So, you know, it's really kind of a preference. You know, wood finishing is an art. I did the same thing basically with this pine. So the pine has a 220 grit finish on, just the same thing as this maple does as well. So typically the standard is going to end up being, you know, using like a 150 or a 180 grit, just because that's what ends up allowing the color to hold the best. You know, it allows the dye to penetrate through easier. So, okay, I won't let you guys suffer through too much of my ramblings on. I'm just going to kind of go over this and keep this wet out for a while. It'll probably take me about, you know, 5 minutes or so to end up doing this board. I'm just using a paper toweling and just drawing some up here and applying it and just keeping it wet. So I will try to fast forward through some of this stuff so that way you guys don't have to suffer through my rambling on. Okay, so now basically I'm just trying to go over this with the isopropyl alcohol. It penetrates a little better, a little deeper as an alcohol base. So I'm basically just going over this now just to make sure that everything is even in the coloring. It looks pretty good. So as you can see, this is going to end up being, you know, a brighter green type coloring, probably pretty close to an emerald green. You know, one of the colors that this is based off of is a color from certain guitar builders and stuff like that. But you know, there's certain colors that I can't give away, certain application secrets that I've worked with some other people. So I hope you guys can kind of understand that. But I was given the okay that I could, you know, give a resemblance color. So you know, one of the things that you could end up doing also is to, you know, doing a wash coat on this and doing a sand back. I probably could do that, and this would probably turn out even that much more spectacular. But you know, I'm just doing this as a color favor. I'm trying to get it done fairly quick because he's looking to get this onto a piece this week, so I need to get this done by this weekend. So anyways, I'm going to apply this onto the pine. I did get a little overspray on here. I shouldn't say overspray, but it splatted onto here as I was doing the maple piece. So hopefully I can work that in. But I will also fast forward through this so that way you don't have to suffer too bad through this as well. Okay, so as you can see, these are drying out now. I didn't put any extra on here after I ended up wiping this off. It's still somewhat damp, my paper towel in here, and you should probably use a rag. Just to be honest with you, this thing ends up falling apart. But you know, I'm just trying to do this as getting a color for somebody and helping to show how to get some colors. So if this was my own personal project that I was going to be doing this on, I would probably end up using a rag personally. Get the same results, really, honestly. But just personal preference, I guess, and it's really not that big of a deal. I suppose rags, I can end up washing it again as well. But when it comes to the camera and making videos and people want to see certain colors made and stuff like that, I don't want anything to be a variable. I don't want people seeing something and then be like, oh, well, it could have changed that color because he had this color on his rag or something, silly like that. But so I'm just trying to help get a color, and helping out is all really. But I'm gonna let these dry out now. With it being isopropyl alcohol, it probably won't take very long. Now, one of the things too, with it being an alcohol, especially on a figured wood, sometimes you got to kind of watch it when this starts to dry out, because what can happen is the hard dense curls or the flames, however you want to look at it, can end up having, it can end up pushing the dye back out. So if that happens, you can just give it a good wipe down while it's still damp. Now it's going to keep going. It'll come back, but after it dries out and burnishes, oh, am I moving the camera? Sorry about that. After it dries out, you can kind of burnish it and clean it up a little that way as well. But it's just sometimes easier to do it while it's still damp and while it is still in the drying process. But it's just something to remember when you're using like alcohol or solvent base. If you're doing it with a water base, it shouldn't be much of an issue. I mean, there might be a slight issue, but the wood tends to swell a little bit more with water, so that's why that doesn't happen quite as much. And plus the water's thicker, so it doesn't quite go as deep. But sometimes you don't want it to go deep, where sometimes you just want it to be like a wash coat or something like that, where you just want to end up giving it a good heavy coating and then sanding it back, and you don't want to end up having to run it through your surface planer to end up getting it, to the point where it actually is just in the deeper portions of the figured wood. And then this way you can just use a sander or something like that. So anyways, so the pine, I'm sure, is going to end up probably being a little bit lighter in color. So better late than never. This could be a way that you could end up getting a lime green as well. If I was looking for the lime green, see, I'm trying to kill two birds with one stone in this video, but anyways, if I was trying to get a lime green color, I would probably end up going with, a 0.6 ratio of the yellow, so 0.6 grams, or just adding a little bit more of the yellow, a little bigger heaping teaspoon of the 1/8. And another thing that you could end up doing too is probably end up running a little, maybe another ounce of the isopropyl alcohol in there as well, because the thinner that, I should say, the more diluted that this is going to be, the lighter it's going to end up being. And then you can, instead of layering on a couple of times to get it a good deep emerald green color, you could probably end up stopping right after this. Or maybe if you wanted to go a second coat, just to have a darker tone to it with a diluted version of this. So you could end up pouring half of this out and then adding 4 more ounces and then going over the top just to darken it up a little bit, but not change it into the emerald green color. So I'm gonna let these dry out and I'll be back in a little bit. This is dried out pretty well. Basically what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do the wash, the sandbag chemical wash technique on this. I'm actually just gonna do it on the maple. I don't think it's gonna really pay to do it on, well, actually I'll do it on both of them. Heck with it, we'll see what happens. So all I did was I just took some of the isopropyl alcohol and I put it onto a cloth that I used to kind of wipe this down as it was drying towards the end of the first segment there, or I should say the application segment. So that's kind of what this would end up looking like. As you can see, it ended up pulling off quite a bit. So that's kind of what that color would end up looking like if I decided to seal it right then and there. It's a pretty nice color right there, the way that it is. All this is doing is just lifting off some of the surface dye, as you can see there. I'm just going to go around this side as well. Do this pine next. So this is another way that you could also end up lightening the color. So say that you end up applying it and it just ends up going a little darker than what you wanted it to. It's just a color demonstration video really, so I'm not getting too far into detail with some of this. The videos get pretty long the way that it is. Um, Anyways, I'm gonna let this dry out and we'll take a look at it and we'll reevaluate when I come back and we'll see what I'll do. All right, so this has had the chance to dry out now. Basically, all I'm going to do now is apply a second coating. And again, I'll probably just end up fast forwarding through this so you guys don't have to sit and watch me. It doesn't really take all that long applying this. Now, the biggest thing with the alcohol base is that it can evaporate fairly quick. It doesn't evaporate quite as quick as, say, like the lacquer thinner or, like the liquid dye with denatured alcohol or something like that would end up evaporating. But so, anyways, I'm just gonna end up fast forwarding through some of this for you guys. Okay, so now all I'm gonna basically do is just go from end to end, just to try to make sure that everything is even in the coating. And I'm just going to go onto this piece while this sits under for a little bit. Now there's just a very thin coat that's remaining left onto that piece of pine, and then I'll just end up wiping off any of the dried excess that's on there. So I'm going to do the same for this piece. And I'll just go all the way around it. Okay, so that's basically that. I'm going to let this dry out, and I'll come back and we'll end up sealing it up. Basically, I'm just going to take this again and just try to help it dry out a little faster, a little even, more even. It also pulls just a slight amount off. Now, another thing that you could end up doing is like taking a sanding sponge. So say you wanted to take a sanding sponge, you want to make sure it's clean. I use this on something else, so I'm not going to use it on here. But you could also just take that and give it a scuff sand, say prior to doing your application. You could also do that after this is dried, just to try to get some of the surface dye off as well, and it'll leave just a little more transparent look to it. But I think this is going to be a pretty nice color. I'm really sorry, Ron, I can't give you the exact makings of that particular color, but I hope that it gets you pretty close, at least to what you're looking for. Now, you can also do a sandback, like say a wash coat, so say that you wanted to apply a deep black on this, well, I believe you have a quilt maple though, so you could do that wash coat first, or you could do a diluted version. You don't necessarily have to have it a deep dark black color, so you could do a diluted version where it would end up highlighting some of the quilt coloring that you have on your piece, and it would just make that contrast and pop a little bit better. So that would be another option for you to do as well. But basically, I'm just gonna let this dry out now, and I'll come back and I'll reevaluate it just to see how deep the color is, and I may put another coat actually onto the pine, just looking at how this is. This is going to be more of the lime green color, so better late than never. That would be an option for you on a pine. Again, if you wanted to do something like that on a maple, then you may want to go with a little bit more yellow. So I'm going to let these dry out, and I'll be back in a little bit. So I'm going to leave this one as it is, just this way. I shouldn't say leave it, I'm not going to dye it further. Now the pine, I think I'm going to actually do this. I'm going to do another one. I'm going to do a little different technique too. Well, I shouldn't say different, but it's just, I'm going to take the sanding sponge, and I've cleaned it off. It's pretty dry. So basically I just took my sanding sponge and I just ran some water over it and cleaned it off pretty well. So I'm just going to sand the surface of this pine, just a scuff sand, nothing major. All right. So that's what I'm looking at. That's what I'm working with here. And this side looks, well, here's a little bit right here. And that's really just from the end grains and stuff like that. So that's really all I'm doing on that. All right, so I'm gonna let this totally dry out now. So this is all dried out now. I really have to apologize up front if you hear some, if the camera's picking up some birds and stuff outside, but I ended up having to open the doors and the windows for this portion of this. Basically, I'm just using a lacquer. It's just a straight high gloss lacquer. I choose the high gloss because, especially in these videos, I know it doesn't work the greatest for the reflection portions of it, but high gloss tends to have a more clear and less tint, whereas like a flat, let me grab this, like a semi-gloss or a flat lacquer. I'm not saying that there's, it's not a drastic difference. It's just that the high gloss doesn't have any flattening powders in it, which can end up, just having a different look to it. So I try to keep it as close to the color as I can in these videos. So that's really the reason why I choose high gloss, because it has less agents in it. So a bit of quick dusting, and I'll let that dry out, and then maybe I'll come back and do one more coat and I'll finish it off camera, just like I usually do. Okay, and then the other side I will probably end up catching once this side dries. I'll do that off camera too, so it's not going to be that big of a difference. Now this is going to be a little trickier since I'm doing this all the way around. Typically what I would do is I would probably have something, I have a board set up that I have nails on that come through the board, and that way it lifts it up off of the ground, and you'll end up just having like little pin marks on the back side of wherever you sprayed it. But I'm not going to use that on this. I'll just do it one side at a time. I'm not in a huge rush. Oh no, I just did that. Not in a huge rush on this or anything. I think I'll have the video done in time for what he's looking for. So basically that's going to be that. It's just a quick dusting. And this is going to get lighter as I go, I imagine. Oh, it was a little sticky. But it will just reevaluate it as I come back. It's pretty dry already to the touch, but I just like to let it sit for a little bit. So, all right, I have this quick dust coat down. I'm just gonna follow up now with a little heavier coat, and then I'm gonna finish the rest of this off camera. Bring you the results. I'm probably going to end up having to wait for the rest of this side to dry out on this maple, and then I will follow up with another coat on the other side. But you'll see the results after I'm done. So I'm just going to finish the rest of this off on camera. So this is kind of where I'm at with this. It looks pretty nice, actually. I like this color. Now you could get it a little bit darker. It's going to be a little bit deeper of a color on something like this maple here, and I just don't want to handle this too much because obviously it's wet. Oh my gosh, my light went out again. So like I said, I'm just gonna let these dry out now. Just gonna set this off here to the side, and I'll come back with the finished results. I just don't want this to get with the overspray and the boards and stuff like that, that it can end up being tacky and I can wreck the other side of this. So I'm just gonna finish this rest of this off camera, and I'll be back in a little bit. I'm back with the finished results of this color that I am calling a bright emerald green, and a lime green color, using the Keda wood dye 5-color kit. So before we get too far into this, I really just wanted to thank you guys for watching my videos, for the kind words that you end up putting in my comment section for the videos, as well as just the encouragement that you guys end up giving me. I really appreciate it more than you actually may realize. I really do get quite nervous making these videos. I'm not exactly sure why. Just something to do with the camera and YouTube. So I apologize for that. I think I've been getting a little bit better, especially with the encouragement that you guys have been giving me. And I just really wanted to reach out and say, hey, thank you so much for doing that. Taking the little extra step that you guys do by leaving a comment. So I really honestly do appreciate that. With that said, I do want to get into this color now. So one of the things I have to mention is that I do know that there's some defects on the side of this curly maple. So I guess the flamed maple section would have some top coat sealer defects in there. I do realize that what had happened was I did run low on my lacquer and it started spatting out. And for those that don't know what spatting is, it's like when your can runs a little bit low and it starts to blow chunks of the top coat sealer onto the wood substrate that you're applying it to. So I did end up doing a sand back on the top coat sealer, so between coat sanding over the top of the lacquer. I did get 2 coats over the flash coat, and on the second coat is when it starts spatting. So I reached for the spar urethane, so there is 1 coat of the spar urethane that is over the top of this. If there was 3 or 4 coats, I would say that there's a chance that there could be like a slight color modification with this, just because of the UV protecting agents that are in the spar urethane. But with just 1 coat, you could go all straight lacquer and get similar color results with this same color. So the 1 coat of the spar urethane isn't going to really make that much of a difference on this color. So I just wanted to kind of get that out there. Anyways, so this was the curly maple with the flamed maple on the side, and moving back to the pine here. This here is the side where I ended up doing the chemical washback, as well as taking the sanding sponge and putting a 3rd coat onto this side. And that's why this side is the lime green. It only has the 2 coats on here. So, better late than never. If you're looking for the lime green still, this is going to be your option, as well as potentially modifying the color formula slightly, maybe going with a little bit more yellow. Otherwise, you could end up adding another ounce of the isopropyl alcohol, and that'll end up getting you a lighter color as well, and potentially closer to the lime green color. But I hope that this has been a pretty decent video for you guys. I hope the formula was pretty easy to follow along with. It seems pretty straightforward. Anyways, thank you guys again for watching, for the words of encouragement. I really honestly do appreciate it so much, and hopefully that this will end up getting some people close to a color that they're looking for. Ron, I apologize again for not having the curly maple and not being able to give you the exact color formula, but hopefully that this gets you pretty close. I believe it will. I think that this is going to be a pretty good color, and I really thank you for watching and for what you did to get me motivated to do this video. So thank you, and I hope that it was helpful. I really do appreciate you guys watching, and I hope that it ends up helping out somebody in the future for trying to attain a nice emerald green color that they may be looking for. So again, I used the Keda 5-color wood dye kit. This one in particular was the wood dye powder. So thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. Talk to you later.